Children, good morning. Hope you all are doing good. So let us welcome to the program NEET Foundation, and today we are going to continue the concept of part 2 video of nervous coordination. So let us see, in the previous class we have discussed about the different types of nervous systems and what are all the parts involved within the nervous systems. Okay. So in this concept we are going to discuss about the spinal cord, the reflex actions and their reactions which are been given by the body. Let us see what is that. What is the spinal cord? The spinal cord is a bundle of nerve fibers. What is a spinal cord? It's a bundle of nerve fibers itself. Okay. So which is enclosed within the spine, covered with the specialized membranes. Okay. So as the brain and the spinal cord is a continuous structure, so we can observe the covering of the brain and also the spinal cord is seen with the three membranous structures called as a meninges, and those meninges which are involved inside the, which is filled with a liquid, the three meninges membranes which are interfilled with the membrane fluid called as a cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so that is called as a CSF. So the spinal cord especially meant for sending the messages from the brain to the different kinds of nerves. Okay, so how many types of nerves, pairs of nerves we can observe? We can observe totally in the spinal cord there are the 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Okay, so let us see the picture here. The spinal cord. So within this spinal cord we can observe, inside to this internally we can observe the bunch of nerves, and surrounding to this outer structure of the spinal cord is filled with a three membranous structures. Okay, so this three membranous structures, the inner matter is the pia mater and the middle matter is the arachnoid matter and the outer membrane is called as a dura mater. Okay, so the three membranes, the outer, the inner is the pia mater, middle one is the arachnoid matter and the outer one is the dura mater. Okay, so the meninges which are covering the spinal cord is called as a spinal meninges. Right, hope you all understood. So now let us see the 31 pairs of nerves. From where to where? Exactly from the beneath region of the brain towards to the posterior region of the dorsal part of a body is of the spinal cord. What is the structure of spinal cord? So if we just go for transverse section of the spinal cord, internally we can observe the grey matter and the external part we can observe the white matter. Okay, so within that we can observe the ventral and the dorsal roots. So those are just related with the, attached with the types of nerves. Let us see what are those. There are structures called dorsal root, the dorsal root ganglion, right, and the ventral root is associated with each spinal nerve. Okay, so there are two types of roots which are present in the each and every section of a spinal cord. So those are the dorsal and ventral roots. So those are attached, arising from the ganglionic structures. So the dorsal root carries the sensory neurons. Dorsal root carries the sensory neurons, means dorsal in the sense the back part which will be carrying the sensory neurons. So these sensory neurons are receiving the message from the sense organs, and that contains the cell bodies of the sensory neurons, and the ventral root carries the motor neurons. Okay, so let us see in detail over here. So this is the transverse section of the spinal cord and the internal partition. This is a grey matter. Yes, and surrounding one is the white matter. Yes, so we can observe the dorsal root and the ventral root. Where is the dorsal root? This is the dorsal root. Okay, that is what even given over here, labeled over here. So this dorsal root contains a type of neuron called as a sensory neuron. Okay, so this sensory neuron carries the message, receives the message from the sense organs. Okay, so skin is one of the sense organ, which is attached with the type of receptor cells. So these receptor cells are also called as a sensory neurons. So that is moving towards to the dorsal root, and this will be moving towards to the brain. Okay. Next, so near the ventral root, this is the ventral part of the ventral root ganglion. This is a ganglionic structure. So this kind of ventral root which is attached with the type of neuron called as a motor neuron. See this, it's been given like this. Okay, so this motor neuron receives the message from the associative neuron which is present inside the gray matter of a spinal cord. Okay, so that we can observe a kind of action which will be done by the spinal cord is a reflex action. So about that we are going to discuss in the next slide. Let us see what is the next concept. Composition of spinal cord. What is the composition of spinal cord? What makes the spinal cord? What is its appearance? What is its color? What is its texture? Let us see here. The spinal cord is composed of white matter and the grey matter. Within the outside region of the spinal cord, we can observe the white matter. As we have discussed in the previous slide, the outer region of the spinal cord is covered by the white matter and the inner region is covered by the grey matter. Yes, so this is a spinal cord internal structure. So there is a central canal that is filled with this fluid called as a cerebrospinal fluid. Always the brain, surrounding the brain we can observe the three meningeus membranes, pia mater, arachnoid matter and the dura matter, which surrounds the brain and enters into the brain cavity. From the brain cavity it enters into the brain stem, and from there it goes towards to the surrounding regions of the spinal cord. So that is what given very clearly in the picture. Okay, so the grey matter and the white matter already we have discussed. So this is the structure. You see the blue colored structure which is surrounding the outside hemisphere of a brain. Okay, so this is moving from outside hemisphere and enters into the internal region. See the first one. Where is the first one? This is the dura mater. Yes, and what is the second one? Cerebrospinal fluid, the blue colored liquid which is surrounding the brain. I guess you could able to observe it clearly. Okay, so here this blue colored liquid which is surrounding the brain and entering into the central region of a brain is called as a CSF. CSF, nothing but cerebrospinal fluid. And what is the third one? Arachnoid matter. So see here in the blue partition, right? So within that we are observing a pink color line. See this line is called as a pink color line. Okay, so this below to this outside matter is the dura matter and below the pink line is the arachnoid matter. Arachnoid matter. And what is the fourth one? Which is exactly attached towards to the surface of the brain. Okay, so that is called as a pia mater, inner membrane. Fourth one is pia mater. Okay, the inner membrane which exactly touches the outside hemisphere of the brain. Okay, and what is the fifth one? Right, this is the brain, complete cream color structure which is covered called as a brain, right? And next one is sixth part. Where is the sixth one? This is the lateral ventricle. See here the liquid is moving into this structure. The complete bluish liquid is entering into this bluish liquid. So this is the lateral ventricle. And next one is the choroid plexus. This structure is called as a choroid plexus. And eighth one is the third ventricle. Ventricle is nothing but it's a kind of chamber. So within the brain there are a kind of chambers which are responsible for sending the material. Which kind of material? A fluid material called as a cerebrospinal fluid which surrounds the complete brain and enters inside the brain. And why it has to enter inside the brain? Through the brain cavity and the space which is present inside to it. It has to move until the spinal cord. Okay. Next. The next one is a cerebral aqueduct. Where is the cerebral aqueduct? This region is the cerebral aqueduct. Okay, so through this we can observe the surrounding region of a spinal cord is also receiving the spinal fluid, cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, see in the picture over here, the blue line indicates it is moving in a outside region, yes, which is getting from the brain, and again from this it reaches up till the end, of the spinal cord, and again goes towards to the upward direction and also surrounds the brain. Okay, so always this kind of membranous structures which are covering both the cerebrum and also the complete surrounding the spinal cord, which makes the membranous structures, three membranous structures, to continuously flow of the fluid. Why? Because it should not get any sort of the mechanical injuries. Okay, it has to maintain the balance. Okay, not to get any sort of injuries. Hope you all understood, dears. Coming to the next concept, what is the reflex action? So you might know about the reflex action. Reflex action, nothing but it's a kind of reaction. What kind of reaction? Sudden reaction, accidental reaction, which is been given by our voluntary muscles. Let us see what are those. Reflex actions are the involuntary responses to a kind of stimulus. Either this kind of stimulus might be the positive or it might be the negative, right? So reflex actions are the adaptations to enable an animal or any sort of living organism to protect itself from the dangerous situations. Immediately a kind of ferocious dog which is chasing us, snake which is trying to fall on us, tree, while we are just going on a road, tree may fall. So what do we do immediately? Either we may go fast, if not we may stop over there. Okay. So these kind of reflex actions are the involuntary actions but given by the voluntary muscles. So reflex actions are carried out by the kind of arcs called as a reflex arcs. What are those arcs called as a reflex arcs, right? So reflex arcs consist of sensory neurons, interneurons and the motor neurons. Okay, so here we can observe the spinal cord which is attached with the dorsal and ventral root along with the grey matter. Okay, so that plays a very major role in just sending the informations from one place to another place through the sense organs into the receptors. Receptors send the message towards to the spinal cord grey matter, the interneurons. Interneurons receive the message from the sensory cells, nothing but the sensory neurons, and from there it sends the message towards to the motor neurons, and these motor neurons are attached towards to the effector organs. Okay, so those effector organs are nothing but the voluntary actions, voluntary muscles. So these muscles will give the sudden reaction with the help of energy. What do they have? The kind of action they'll do is called as a contraction and relaxation. Okay, so let us see in the picture what is given. Yes, so there is one of the situation you see. So one thing is the stimulus. What is the stimulus here? Just the hand is trying to touch the thorn of a plant. Okay, so if we just go to touch the thorn of a plant, we know that it's a sharp. Okay, accidentally it may happen, right? So if we just observe this, so the finger is touching towards to the thorn. So here to the skin, this is a sensory organ. So this sensory organ is attached with the kind of receptors called as a sensory cells. So this is sending the message. First it receives the message from the sense organ and it sends the message towards to the spinal cord. Okay, so this is the neuron, sensory neuron in the dorsal region. Okay, this is the dorsal root ganglion. Okay, so this is sending the message towards to the sending the message towards to the interneuron. This green colored structure is called as a relay neuron, or also we can consider it as a interneuron. Okay, associative neuron also we can say. So this is a linking system in between, linking neuron in between the sensory neuron and a motor neuron. Okay, so this sends the message towards to the motor neuron. It's a bluish in color. Okay, very easily identifiable. The sensory neuron is in red color, interneuron or relay neuron is in green color, and the motor neuron is in a blue color, right? So this motor neuron receives the message from the relay neuron and sends the message towards to the effector organ. Okay, so this effector organ, now its duty is to give the reaction. Okay, so what is the reaction? Immediately withdrawing the hand back. Okay, so very immediately, within a fraction of seconds we will be drawing our hand back. Okay, so that is the signal which is given by the reflex arc. Okay, so what are playing a major roles here? The skin, here it is a skin, normally we can say it as a sense organs, and the receptor cells, sensory nerves. Next the relay neuron, nothing but the associative neuron, and next it is sending the message to the motor neuron, and after the motor neuron it gives the message towards to the muscles, nothing but the effector organs. Okay, so this is nothing but the continuous process. So it is done by the reflex action. Voluntary muscles involved in a involuntary actions, right? Next concept, what is the example of reflex action? So previously we have discussed about just touching the thorn, and if not we can take the finger is touching the light, candle light. If not, we may get the electric shock also. Yes, so we may touch by accidentally some animals, grazing animals. Yes, near the field areas the farmers will be arranging the electrical wires, the animal not to enter into the field areas. Okay, so if the animal touches that wire, they may get immediate shock. So immediately what do? They'll jump back. Okay, so the jumping back is called as a reflex action. Okay, so this is one of the example of the hot object. So this hot object is touched by the finger, sending the message towards to the dorsal nerve cord, sending the message to the interneuron, sending the message again towards to the motor neuron, and effector organ is been giving the reaction. So this is one of the situational example of a reflex arc. A common reflex action is a withdrawal reflex, where if you touch something hot, you will pull your hand away very quickly. So hand is nothing but the muscles which are present inside the limbs are called as a voluntary muscles, as immediately we are withdrawing it back. So this kind of immediate reaction is called as a reflex action, involuntary action. The sensory neuron detects. Effectors are nothing but reactors. What are the detectors? They are finding the kind of stimulus what it is, whether it might be the positive or it might be the negative. So that something hot has been touched and sends the message to the spinal cord via the dorsal root. Okay, so this kind of mechanism is considered as a reflex action. Hope you all understood, dears. Right? So next, what is the concept? The sensory neuron. So now we will be discussing about each and every part of the reflex arc. What is the function of the sensory neuron? So these sensory neuron synapses means join together. The gap, the junction in between two neurons is called as a synapse. So with an interneuron just inside the grey matter of the spinal cord and passes on the message. So that is what given over here. The dorsal root region is attached towards to the interneuron. The dorsal root region, which kind of neuron is present? Sensory neuron is attached near the one end of a interneuron. So this creates a kind of synapse. Yes, so this is the synapse where we can observe the transferring of messages from one neuron to the another neuron. That is a function of a sensory neuron. Okay. Next, what is the function of interneuron? Sensory neuron received the message from the sense organ and sending the message towards to the interneuron. Now what is the duty of the interneuron? The interneuron relays the message onto the motor neuron. Relays in the sense passing, receiving and passing. Okay, so that is called as a relay junction, whose cell body is just inside the grey matter of the spinal cord. Here the grey matter plays a very major role. So within the grey matter only we can observe much amount of the cell bodies, so that we can able to observe the sending the messages by creating the synapses. See here, the skin is stimulated by the pricking process. Okay, so just pricking on the skin. So this pain receptor finger, which is attached with the sensory neuron, which carry the nerve impulses to the spinal cord. Okay, so what kind of nerve impulses? It might be the electrical impulse or it might be the chemical impulse. So sending the message towards to the interneuron. So connecting the relay neuron carries impulse from the sensory towards to the motor neuron. So this kind of associative neuron is creating a synapse and sending the message towards to the motor neuron. So this motor neuron carries the impulses. So up till now we have discussed like the nerves are sending the messages. Yes, in what way they are sending the messages? In impulses. Okay, so those impulses are nothing but the electrical impulses and the chemical impulses. So they will be sending the message to muscles, effector organs called as a muscles. So here we can observe the pathway is generated by the electrical impulse and the chemical impulse. So these plays a very major role. Electrical and the chemical impulses which are passing from one neuron to the another neuron and giving the reaction. So that is the function of relay or interneuron. Next, function of the last neuron but not the least neuron, which plays a very major role. The motor neuron sends a message out through the ventral root. Ventral root in the sense below part. Okay, the ventral root to the skeletal muscles of the arm to pull the hand away from the hard object. Okay, so each and every part, the sensory neuron, the associative neuron, the motor neuron, the spinal cord, the grey matter and the synapses in between each and every neuron, the effector organs and the partitions, exactly the connections where the receptors and the detectors and the effectors. Detectors will be attached towards to the sense organs and these effectors will be attached towards to the effector organs. Okay, so those plays a very major role in connecting the link so that they could able to receive and send the messages towards to the targeted areas, so that we could able to give the response. Okay, see here same thing. The spinal cord is along with the grey matter, the interneuron is being present. It is responsible for receiving and sending the message towards to another neurons. Okay. Yes. Thank you dears. Hope you all enjoyed this video. We'll meet in the next session.